Good afternoon. I'm Reverend Barbara Schreiner Trudell, affectionately called Rev B. Welcome to Joy with Rev B on the New Thought Media Network. Joy is an acronym for just one you. And that's what this show is all about, that when we find our authentic self, our authentic voice, that's when we can really do amazing work in the world. So I would like to begin by acknowledging the land that I'm on today. So I acknowledge that the land I'm meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. And I'm grateful to work and to live and to play on Turtle Island. So grateful for this time together. I just honor all Indigenous peoples wherever they are. And on that note, I just want to talk a little bit about the show. So, this whole idea of living from your authentic self creates great power and vision, great possibility and opportunity. It allows us to really find our groove and our rhythm, and it creates harmony within our own selves, but harmony also within the world around us. When we remember that there's only one thing going on, that all of us are some part of it, our thinking in and out of this universal consciousness actually changes it. So, what is it that you're thinking about today? So, as we move forward, we want to make sure that our thoughts, our words, and our actions are in alignment with the divine vision that we have for our lives. Well, I'm really, really grateful for this show because I get to interview and chat with some of the most remarkable people. And today is no exception. I have with me Bonnie Gonzalez, religious science practitioner. She is also an RN, but here's what's cool. She has a show on Mondays called Your Doula for Grief. Is that right? Your Doula for Grief. That's right. So Bonnie currently does that show on Mondays, and it's about demystifying grief and bringing it out of the shadows and illuminating its gifts. Oh, there's something you didn't think about, right? Well, help me to welcome the wonderful, the remarkable, the outstanding Bonnie Gonzalez. Hey, Bonnie.
Thank you so much, Rev B. It's so good to be with you again. We're reunited from having done good news. So
I think there's a song about that. Reunite.
reunited again feels so good. And it does feel good. It feels so
It
wonderful
does.
to be here with you
Oh,
and
it's great.
helping you touch the lives of so many and helping so many people.
Well, it's so important for us to have examples, when
Mm,
we're looking at, I got to live an authentic life. Well, what does that look like? Well, here's a
yes,
woman who's living an authentic life, right? Now,
yes.
most people wouldn't choose grief
Wouldn't choose grief for,
for their work,
oh, oh,
so tell me, how did you
well.
get into that particular niche?
Yes. Well, let me start with a little bit of a disclaimer. So, because what I'm going to talk about is grief from a loss. But
Yeah.
what I want people to understand before I move into my share is that loss, we experience a myriad of losses every day, if you think
Yeah.
about it, just in different ways. And loss is defined as any unexpected or even an expected occurrence where you can't go back to the way things were before.
Like
So that,
COVID.
yes, I always say death is the big mother of loss. So death, but then divorce, receiving a diagnosis of
Yeah.
some kind that really devastates you,
Yeah.
a geographical move,
Yes.
natural disaster, also birth of a child, puberty, maturing, graduation, a job loss, a loss of a business, even just a loss of a hope and dream. So
Yes.
So I want that to be clear, because if you hold it, I feel, Rev B, in that frame,
Mhm.
then it's easier to move into grief. Because the first thing normally that we think about grief, it's always about death, always about death.
It is, yes.
And I'll just say this, that loss is what we experience.
Yeah.
Grief is what we feel.
Yes.
Grief brings us a myriad of emotions: sadness, anger, confusion, even numbness,
Yeah, yeah.
guilt, anxiety, regret. We discussed that a little bit. Regret can even pop in there. So,
Yeah.
with that said, this is then to answer your question, how I got to embracing grief.
Yeah.
Um, I was young. I was early 30s, and my father was dying of cancer.
Mm.
And I was like maybe 3 months pregnant, but I just didn't want him to know, because at that time I felt like maybe he would be so regretful that he would never see this child.
Yeah.
And he loved having grandkids.
Mm.
But I just remember sitting with him, and that need to express how much I was going to miss him was so overwhelming,
Yeah.
so overwhelming,
Yeah.
that I thought, I'm just going to have to take a deep breath. What is that expression? Put my big girl panties on. And
Yeah.
Rev B, I sat there, and I'm sure I sobbed through my entire how much, Daddy, I'm going to miss you. I'm just going to miss you so much when you're gone. I'm just going to miss you.
Yeah.
And Rev B, this is what he said to me. He said, Bonnie, I don't want you to take my dying so hard. And I was like, what do you mean? How can I not? He says, Bonnie, I don't want you to take my dying so hard,
Mm.
because I've been to the other side. I've seen the other side. And he says, honey, we're going to be together again. And those words were spoken like over 38 years ago. And that has been my solace, that has sustained me
Yeah.
through grief. And it allowed me to really grieve. He gave me the opportunity to see what it's like to be with intense sadness,
Yeah.
just intense sadness, deep pain as well. But he allowed me the opportunity to feel that.
Wow. That's awesome.
And that's why I can say that the superpower of grief is healing. The superpower of
Mm.
grief is healing.
I love that.
That is the reason that I invite people to allow themselves to lean into grief. And so, anyway, I will stop there.
Well, I love that so much. I just put it in the chat there. It's like that whole idea, because really, if we allow ourselves to grieve, we
Mm-hmm.
come through it, and the result is a healing, which is fantastic.
Right.
That Man, I love that statement, just absolutely took me by surprise, but I
Yeah.
love it, and I love what you were talking about with your dad, because, um, I had a brother who died years ago, who committed suicide, and, we
Uh,
were obviously very, very distressed. He was in his
mhm.
late 30s, and, I think he died on a Thursday, and then on the Sunday morning when I was at church in meditation, he came to me in the meditation, and we had this, I'll call it a conversation, but of course it wasn't like us speaking now, but there was a communication. I'll call it that. That's more like it.
Mhm.
We had a communication, and he told me that he was fine. He said, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm
Mhm.
good. I'm good. And
Mhm.
it was just love. Like, there was just love pouring out. Like, if I had to name him anything, it would be love,
Love,
right?
exactly.
It was so powerful. Now, he committed suicide,
So
and so
that
I was really surprised, and he just said to me, he said, he said, "I just needed out. I needed to change everything that was going on, and I couldn't change it while I was there."
mm,
And he said, "I want you to do my eulogy for me." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I can do that." And
right.
so I phoned his organization the next day, the church that he had been a part of, and they said, "Yeah, no, you're not related to him, so no, you can't speak, and only the brothers can, because it's the
Mm,
Jehovah's Witness, and
right.
unless you're a member of the Jehovah's Witness, you're not considered part of the family. So
Mm,
blood, marriage, all those things are irrelevant." So I couldn't do the eulogy, and I was quite distraught about that. And so
mhm.
on the Friday morning of his service, I was sitting at my computer and I went, "Wait a minute." And I wrote a poem.
Ah,
I wrote a poem and I printed off a bunch of copies and handed it out at the service. I thought, "You just try to shut me up."
there you go. We women, we find a way.
We
We
find a way.
way.
But,
Yeah.
it just follows what you just said. It's like death is not an ending. It is a
And
transitioning into something else, because he was still clearly there. And like your dad said, I've seen the other side.
I've seen the other side. And I sometimes feel like he died when I was so young. I mean, well, I was in my 30s, but I
Okay.
just felt like he died when I was so young. But
Yeah.
I want to say this, that right after his death, maybe it was less than a week after his death,
Mhm.
he came to me in a dream. He
Yeah.
came to me in a dream. And in the dream, I was a little girl again, living in this house that we lived in when I was a little girl.
Yeah.
And there was a room off to the side that you would get taken to if you needed to have a little come to Jesus meeting.
Oh, I had lots of those as a kid.
I was pretty good, but anyway, he took me to that little room, Rev B, and he explained every detail of death to me. He explained, he answered every question I had about death.
Oh,
And
man.
I just thought, wow. When I woke up, I just felt so refreshed and so relieved around his death and dying.
Yeah.
But I could not remember one word that he said.
Well, yeah. I've had that experience as well.
Not one word, but I thought, he's transitioned, and I look at it in another realm, and
Yeah,
maybe verbal communication and words are not necessary.
that's right.
That's why there was no, and maybe there was, not maybe, there was no need for me to really know at this time. Isn't death the great mystery? So there was,
Yeah, and it needs to remain that.
that's thing.
And yeah, and you're okay with it. I'm okay with it.
I am absolutely fine with
Yeah.
it. Um, there's a Buddhist chant that's devotion to the mystic law of cause and effect.
Mm,
And mystic, not because it's magical, but
right.
mystic is because in this dimension we cannot understand that. We
That's
just
right.
so uh,
Wow.
that's really what got me moving in that direction of really working with. I was a registered nurse, so remember, you're meeting all types of people with different situations, and even,
Yeah.
of course, with family members that are dying,
Yeah.
um, and working with the patients. I have learned so much
Yeah.
about life. I have learned the most valuable. Oh, I was going to say I apologize. I'm in the home of two dogs. They invited me over, so I'm their guest. I'm the guest. So,
You're the guest of the puppies.
so please forgive me. Please forgive me.
Oh,
Yes.
not a
Uh,
problem.
so uh, anyway, that was, I kind of lost my train of thought. The dog gets
The dog's still been interrupted. Well, it's interesting. What I like about what you had to say earlier is that this is about loss. It's not just about death. And that's a really important thing to remember for any of us who've had losses. Like, I've had both my parents have passed, my grandparents have all passed. I've had some aunts and stuff who've passed, but I've also been divorced and I've had a miscarriage and right like I've been fired from a job and like there's all of these different things that have caused me great
Mhm.
grief, right?
Come on. Right. And that's what I was going to that's where I was moving into the direction
Yeah.
of working with working with patients. Patients comes with families, and then family dynamics come into play.
Yes.
For instance, having a patient, say the patient is dying. At one point, I was doing home health, but then you have the caretaker who's getting divorced, and she's just so like distraught with having to take care of this person and dealing with that loss of that relationship.
Yeah.
And I was going to say 2 years ago, we relocated completely out of the country.
Yeah.
And my loss was that loss of a lifestyle that's
Oh,
so
right.
accustomed to. I
Yes.
can I can still have moments now where I long for or yearn for, my bed in my old house and my car and my lifestyle. So
Yeah.
that still allows me those moments of
Yeah.
disbelief at times. Sometimes I can get a little grief just shows up, all the emotions on the spectrum, all the emotions on the
It
spectrum
does.
come into play when you're grieving. And so sometimes I do have that sense of regretting of not tried to make things work out better so I could have stayed. But I here's what I was gonna say. What I've learned is to just lean into what shows up. Lean
Oh,
into what
that's beautiful. Yeah.
lean into it. Um,
That's a great message.
because in our society, and I'm not picking on people or putting anything down. This is all just observation, just an observation. We have a culture really that is avoidance, avoiding discomfort,
True.
avoiding discomfort. And so when I want to avoid discomfort, it's with the conscious knowing that I'm choosing not to think about that right now. I don't have the bandwidth in this moment.
Yeah.
Versus, oh, I'm not going to think about that. I'm just going to have a drink. I'm going to, do whatever. Let me just take a pill or something so I'm not in physical pain.
Yeah.
So doing it with awareness, doing it with that sense of awareness.
Well,
Um,
awareness is power, right? So that really changes things when you go, here's what I'm feeling, and I'm going to sit in it. I'm not going to live here, but I'm going to allow it to be and see what exactly I need.
right. And we can talk a little bit, if you want, when you want, about some ways to really navigate grief, some ways to move through it. Um, I love that term, ease and grace, to move through it with ease and grace.
Yes.
You can move through it with ease and grace, but it is painful. And so I
It
don't
is.
want it to sound like I'm saying, oh, yeah, just do this and
Oh, it's so easy.
your heels 3 times and you're home sweet home. So,
Yeah, it doesn't work. I
yeah.
like what the Buddhists say, though, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Mm,
And I
yes.
think that's
Mm,
where our thinking takes us. It's like something happened, and then I rerun it, and I rerun it, and I rerun it, and that's where the suffering comes in because I'm living in it, and I'm stuck there. So how do we break that? How do we break out of those patterns of, recycling our pain so that we're constantly
right.
suffering?
Yeah, I do want to say one quote. I love that you brought that Buddhist quote up. And
Yeah.
there's another one that I resonate with as well. especially when things are difficult.
Yeah.
It's suffer what there is to suffer, enjoy what there is to enjoy. That
Mm.
life offers both.
Yes.
No one can escape hardship or pain, not even a Buddha or a sage. So for me, that puts it back into that
Yeah.
perspective
Absolutely.
that oh, that's it, that it came to pass. It came to pass.
Yeah.
And as far as getting into this rumination, that is such a common phenomenon of ruminating. And if you, there's just so many different tools or practices that you can use, and it all depends on what part of this are you ruminating out of regret, or you just ruminating out of that pain or trauma of having. It's like, what exactly are you ruminating?
Yeah.
And my first and foremost tip for that is to know that grief needs to be heard.
Mm.
Grief needs to be validated.
Yes.
It needs to be heard. When you find yourself in that ruminating pattern, find someone to talk to. I was trying to come up with an acronym for this. For what I call it is my grief love squad. Who do
I love that.
I'm trying to? It's like GLS, GPS Grief People Squad, grieving. Anyway,
Yeah.
but the first thing is to know that you really need support. You really need support. Think about it. We are social creatures. We are. That's why we're even having this program right now, because
Exactly.
we're social. So remember that. And my first question to any client is, who do you have that can support you? Who do you have that can support you? And please don't say my husband, my boyfriend, my girlfriend. It's like they're already tapped out. they are they are tapped out with
They are for sure, for sure. Yeah, yeah, you need somebody else. And it
right.
has to be somebody who can listen.
And someone who can listen, and someone that knows
Mhm.
kind of the role that they're signing on for.
Yeah.
I'm signing on for this because it would be so sad to have someone sign on to say yes, but then when you call, it's like, oh, I can't do that right now, girl. I'm just. It has to be a
Yeah,
mutual agreement, a mutual
that's
agreement, and that's why I say a squad. Maybe you need a little squad, a little love squad, as I call it, a little group
I love that. I love that.
that
I
really
think
here.
it's one of the things, when I moved to Toronto, which is basically all the way across the country from where I was born and raised, and moving here was a bit of a challenge. I love it here and stuff, but
Mhm.
it was difficult because I came from a big family, you know,
Oh,
one of 10, and I'm the eldest, and I had, 3 children and 2 grandchildren, and I go and I moved to Toronto, which is like, I don't know, 4,000 kilometers away or whatever. And it's like I'm on the other side of the world and I don't really know anybody. And it's one of those experiences where it's like you're doing what you love and you're doing it in a city you really enjoy and you're having a blast doing it, but you're missing certain things. Like I miss my siblings.
yeah.
I miss my children, my grandchildren. I miss, all my old friends that I just don't get to see anymore because they're not coming to Toronto. They're staying where they are, right? They're not coming to
Yeah.
visit. They don't know how great it is here, but, you know, hopefully they'll learn
Right.
one day. Um,
Right.
but it
And
becomes lonely, and that is another, thing that
that
brings up grief.
yes, yes, yes. And who do you turn to when those because it's a yearning. And
It
it's
is.
not always it's not always that we can satisfy a yearning. That
No.
And that's what I'm saying, just lean into it, be with it. Those are the times that you journal to it to really explore it fully. What is it exactly that I'm yearning?
And
Yeah.
that I'm glad you mentioned journaling because that's a great way to sort of get underneath what's really causing the emotion that we have, whether it's sadness or anger or whatever it is. It's like journaling will really help to unlock that.
Yes. And I know that some people hear the word journaling, oh, I'm not a journaler. But you could try like word mapping. A word map?
Yeah.
Put one word in the middle and draw lines off, and what other things come up from that one emotion that you've uh, titled. Um,
I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
um,
Word
I am
map.
also a soul collage, a facilitator.
Yeah, I saw that in your I was wondering what that was.
And a soul collage is just what it says. It's collage, a collage card that's made. Um, and this whole process was started by Sina Frost, who was a psychotherapist.
Okay.
And what she found is that images speak to us in ways that words never can. That images evoke a certain feeling, certain words come up.
Yep.
So what we do in soul collage, the whole idea of soul collage is making cards from the soul. And in soul collage, it is separated. Our spirit wants to ascend and be with one, and namaste and meditation. But our but our souls came here to play. It's like our souls like to get down and dirty, dance, food, sex, fun, friendship, all of those things.
Yeah.
And that's where you're making soul collage cards from.
Oh, that's very cool.
And the idea is that all you need for soul collage is one image, your imagination, and intuition. And you take it, you just
Mm.
5x7 card. You're not going to do anything big and grandiose because the idea is to narrow things down so that you can really
Right.
focus in on what that image says.
Oh my goodness, I wanna know more about that.
Um,
We're gonna go to a quick break, and then we're gonna come back, and I wanna know more about that.
okay.
You've really twigged my interest here. This is Rev B, and this is The Joy Show, and my guest, Bonnie Gonzalez, and we will be back in just a moment, so stay tuned to the New Thought Media Network.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience? Or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
Well, welcome, welcome. This is Rev B, and this is the Joy Show. Just one you, and how living authentically changes the game and makes life so phenomenal. My guest today is Bonnie Gonzalez, and she is your doula for grief. And she is sharing some great information with us here now. And her show is on Mondays at 3
At 3 p.m., yes, Central Time,
3
2 p.m.
p.m.
No, 3
Central.
p.m. Eastern Time. That's your time. That's where your times are. I'm in Central Time down
Oh,
in Mexico, so it's 2.
okay, so 3
Yes,
p.m. Eastern time.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
hopefully people will check that out as well. So we were talking a little bit about this soul collage.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Oh, Rev B, I wish I had sent you a few cards or could do a screen share, but that's okay. You'll get the
Yeah.
you'll get the idea. I'll just explain one card when we talk about images having the ability to speak or evoke certain emotions. I
Yeah.
had made a soul collage card of this woman with this intense, a really intense face. It must have been hot. She was just like sweating, and she had her hands in a prayer position, and she looked just so intensely desperate. That's what came through.
Yeah.
And I put her with her desperate look with an owl that had this far reaching eyes. You know, owls are knowledge and wisdom. And I made the card. So she's there with this intense look. The owl has its wing covering her chest.
Mm.
And when I journaled to it, it said, "That's how I'm living my life, with desperation from fear." And the owl was there saying, "I'm your protector. There's nothing to worry. I have far reaching vision that you don't have to worry. I'll protect you."
That's
And
awesome.
after doing my workshops, I always tell people, leave your card out, leave it out so that you pass by it every day, that you see it. I said, because that card can continue to speak to you. And
Hmm.
so I left my card out. A couple weeks go by. Every morning I think, yeah, that's me. It's like really desperate.
Yes.
And one morning, that card just said, "Psst, over here, Bonnie." It's like, this is not desperation, girl. This is what it looks like, because you're so grateful for your life. You're in such
Mhm.
gratitude to the divine, Holy Spirit, for caring for you. This is the face of gratitude. So that has become my gratitude card. And that's what I mean about images. And so if you're ruminating, you can sit down with a magazine and just flip through a magazine, rip out a page that just speaks to what it is that you're
Yeah.
tossing over and over in your mind. Pull
Yeah.
that page out, cut it out, and put it on a card, and then just talk to it. It's, I am the one who. What is it that you want me to know? The
Oh,
gifts I bring you are. There's just, and I was going to say, you can find soulcollage.com if you want more information, if you want to order in books, but it's just a process that anyone can use, and it truly is helpful for those times of rumination,
yeah.
along with journaling. And not everybody's a meditator, because you can always meditate to quiet your mind.
Yes.
And for those people, I say, for some people, walking in nature is meditative. Just walking, putting
Yes.
one foot in front of the other, concentrating on, here's what I say, that with each step, your foot is being kissed by the earth. So let the earth support you. Let the earth send you love. Let that, feel the kiss of the earth. So
That's
those are
nice.
just some ways that you can move through grief and move through rumination. That was your question, especially rumination. The idea is to break that cycle,
Mhm.
whatever it takes to stop that. And
That's important because we can get caught up in it where the grief is like this never ending darkness inside of us that is causing excruciating pain, that we're not actually allowing it to morph into a new reality. We're kind of holding it like almost like a badge of honor or something. It's like,
Mhm.
I have to hold this for a long time. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we don't have to hold it. It is organic. It sort of comes and goes, and it lands and it leaves and it returns. It reminds me of the ocean, the way the waves
Oh, beautiful.
that yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the fears and that people have about leaning into grief is that they'll be overwhelmed by it. They'll be pulled down. It's like quicksand. They'll never be able to raise their
Never
head again. Life is just
never
over.
get out of it.
Yeah, you're doomed to cave.
Yeah.
But that is just not true. And we don't know that because of that fear of going there. You think, oh, but even if you can only, I offer people lean into it. Just maybe if you can only do a minute today of,
Yeah.
60 seconds, I'm going to let myself feel this.
Yeah.
3 minutes, I'm going to let myself feel it. You don't have to.
Yeah, that's really helpful, actually, that idea of just leaning in. I think that's good for almost any area of our lives, when we're looking at making changes or doing whatever. If we just lean into a new idea, we don't have to go all out all the way. We can lean in and,
Mhm, mhm.
sort of get our footing over time.
Yes,
Mhm.
little by little until it's finally. I was just thinking of the word absorbed until it has passed. That it has passed. I When I get in that place, I just say to myself, okay, I'm just going to let grief have its way with me right now.
Ah, lovely.
Let grief have its way.
Yeah.
But that's because I know that it will pass. And for those people
Yeah.
that haven't gotten there yet, I just invite you to take just a few minutes to feel
That's
this.
yeah, that's really good, actually, because even if you were to allow yourself to have 5 minutes, we had an election here yesterday, and I wasn't fond of the results.
Oh, one of those. Yes.
Of those. And
Yeah.
so I caught myself, I was doing my morning pages, I'm journaling, I'm
Mm.
getting ready to journal, and I wanted to have some music on the TV. So I grabbed the remote and I pressed the button so I can speak to it so it'll do what I tell it to do. And I go to say, Stingray Spa or whatever, and I'm all of a sudden tears, and I'm like
Oh, it's that.
all around the election. It was like I was grieving the election.
That's that's good when it happens. That is, I
Mhm.
mean, it's better to have the tears come now versus going to the grocery store and the clerk doesn't have change and you dissolve into sobbing on the counter. You don't have. I mean, I'm just saying, it can come out as maybe an inappropriate time.
It's true. Well, that's why it reminds me of the ocean. I so many times, like at a Sillamore and stuff, I'd be walking along, and the water comes and it's just touching your toes. So you go out a little further, and it's still just touching your toes. You go out a little further, and all of a sudden a wave comes in and knocks you flat on your butt, and you're
It's
soaked.
like, what happened?
And that's what grief does. It's like, it's kind of there, but all of a sudden it just slams you to the mat, and you don't even know why it hit in that moment.
Yes,
But
yes,
it just comes when it comes, and
yes.
we just have
And
to be with it.
allow it, allow it.
Yeah.
It's so funny you say that. The other day, I was just listening to my favorite song in the radio, and I was like, "Oh, that's my favorite song." And then I just started thinking about what was going on at that time, and I'm like, "Oh, let me turn it off. It's no longer my favorite song."
It's the
No,
favorite song that makes me cry.
no,
Oh my god.
but I left it on, and I just stayed with those feelings. I stayed with those
Yeah.
feelings until
Yeah.
the song ended, and my go-to is if I have a good cry, I just feel refreshed. I
Yeah.
feel refreshed and feels like there's been more space opened in the container to hold more. But
Yeah,
when I
I agree.
don't, it's like a log jam. Nothing can get through. Not even not even good times can get through.
No, nothing can. Yeah, if we're not willing to feel pain, we're not gonna feel joy either.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
cannot have one without the other.
Right.
It's like if
And
we're shutting down our emotions, we've shut them down.
what I'd like people to embrace the idea that we can hold both.
Yes,
We
we
can hold extreme sadness and tears. And another minute, we could laugh with joy, see a picture of a newborn baby. That we can hold both. We can
yeah. That's
hold
uh, that's something that I learned. I've done a lot of funerals, a lot of memorial
both.
services.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I'm not a grief doula, but I'm, the person doing these other things that are helping people get through their grief. And what's interesting is in doing these services, I was surprised at, like, I don't even know how I fell into it. I mean, it's cool that what kind of led you. I have
And
no idea. I have no idea. I just know that, like, I had a meditation years ago where I stepped out of my body. And so that eliminated my fear of death because I went, well, obviously I'm not the body. So if it dies, who cares? Right?
wow.
Because I'm something more. But there was something about that transformed the fear that I had about death and
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to just go, okay, death, I don't know what death is for sure, but I know it's nothing to be afraid of. It
Wow.
is just a transitioning from one way of being to another, and
Mm-hmm.
that changed everything for me.
Mm-hmm.
That and I think that's what made it easier when my brother died as well.
Yeah.
Because when he came to me, it was like, "Oh, of course, this just solidifies what I've been
Mm-hmm.
thinking anyway, um, that there's something more going on." And when we look at the world and the way the world is right now, we can focus on, well, it's broken, it's flawed, it's awful, it's terrible,
Mm-hmm.
or we can focus on, you know what, let me just send some love out here. Let me just shine this light in any area where there's appears to be darkness. Let me shine some light there and lift it up, uh,
Mm.
which for me is so important, that what we're thinking into the universal is actually affecting everything and everyone.
Yes. I
So,
wow. You said a lot there that I wanted to comment on. I loved how when you talked about that out of body experience during your meditation,
mhm,
how that moved you beyond that fear
yeah,
of death. And it's just reminding me, I think that's what happened with that dream with my father so many years ago, that it just removed that. And once you get beyond the fear of dying,
mhm,
you can really enjoy and embrace life. There's a freedom that comes.
absolutely. That's yeah, that's exactly it. Because once the fear's gone, then now what?
Then what? So how do we hmm, how do we share that with others? How do we share that? Because I don't know, Rev B, if you have that mindset that sometimes people have to find their way,
Absolutely, they do.
sense that they're on their own hero's journey.
Yeah.
And for me, when that happens, I feel that let me just be supportive right where they are, right where they are. I
I think that's our job, is just to create that sacred container where they can be where they are. I don't need them to be different. I don't, there's nothing worse than when somebody's crying and somebody goes up and starts hugging them and trying to get them to stop, right? My
yes, yes.
feeling is, how can I support you as you
Mhm.
release? Because tears, like you said, you always feel better after, like your container's been, made larger. That idea, I believe that our tears are the way we wash the pain away. It
Hmm.
just sort of flows and takes it with it. And I remember years ago when I was doing inner child work, and I would start to cry and I would go to stop myself. And I would stop myself because I actually thought, if I let myself go there, it would never end.
That's what I mean. Yes, that you'll never come back. You've crossed over the edge. You know, you're off the cliff. And as you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
for me, I've had a few times where I couldn't cry. That was even worse. I mean, for me,
Oh,
it
yeah.
would that I just wanted to sob about something, but no tears would
No
come.
tears would come. Yes.
That's
Yes.
another form of grieving, another emotion that needs to have some mm, have a look, just taking a look. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I
without.
think it's important to acknowledge where we are in any given moment. That's and being
Mhm,
vulnerable.
mhm. Yes, yes, yes.
You gotta be vulnerable. That's hard for a lot of us. We don't really wanna be vulnerable.
Yeah, yes, yes. There's a lot of things that we don't want,
But we
but
have to deal with it anyway.
but I was gonna say, if you can do it once, if you can do it twice, you realize, that's okay too. That's okay too. What is that?
Yeah.
What is that? What other people think about me is none of my business.
Exactly. Good, bad, or indifferent.
Exactly.
Like that's
Mhm.
the big thing. Good, bad, or indifferent. Because I know that sometimes uh, I remember an interview that really spoke to me, and it was Meg Ryan who was being interviewed by Oprah.
Mm.
And she said to her, she said, I don't read anything or watch anything that's said about me.
Wow.
And Oprah was like, "Really?" And she goes, "Oh yeah." She said, "If somebody gives me rave reviews and I read it, then that's going to be in my head next time I go to do something, and I'm
Oh,
going to be trying to live up to that.
oh,
And if
that's
they say something bad about me, I'll probably cry, so I don't." And Oprah's like,
oh
"Oh
gosh.
my God, you are so wise." She said, "I wish I would listen to that."
Yeah, because
You
I've
know?
heard that. Yeah, people
Oh,
are
people
just,
have said horrible things about Oprah.
yeah.
It's,
Oh
you
my
know,
goodness.
I look at that and I go, "Really?"
Yes, yes. But that's their perception. Um, you
Their
did say,
envy or
yeah.
yeah.
You did say something going back, um, about the current situation, the current
Mhm.
atrocities that are
Yeah,
happening,
yeah.
and that we're all moving through it together.
We are, yeah,
We're moving it through it together. Um,
yes.
and I wanted to just offer the idea that this is what's called collective grief, that we're all grieving.
Yeah,
We are all grieving the atrocities that have happened. Um, and I say, as a grief doula, that's my role, to grieve with you, to
yeah.
hold the light, shine the light as you navigate that path. And I was going to say for you, Rev B, I feel like ministers and spiritual leaders are like the first responders. You
Yeah,
you have first responders and medics that go out for these things that happen,
yeah,
but you're in that role of being a first responder for emotion
that's
and spirit,
that's true, yeah.
and just wanted to ask you how you hold that. I mean, that is just, mm,
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess for me, it's just being compassionate, right? It's just
mm,
holding a space where I can just love someone and give them space for whatever they need, because I don't know, right? I
mhm,
don't know what they need. And as a practitioner and stuff as well, it's not my place to think I know, because that would
yeah,
be that would be wrong. I'd be wrong because
and
I
it's
can't
not
know.
helpful. Yeah, it's not helpful, is it?
No, it's
It's,
not helpful. It's where that
yes.
that skill for listening is so important, and paying attention to
Mhm.
the other person, because we think I remember when I was doing my practitioner studies, and we would work with clients at after services and stuff like that. And I remember a young man came to me, and he was hauling an oxygen tank. He was in his early 30s, and he had lung cancer. And so when he came to me, I thought, oh, okay, he's going to want me to pray for his healing.
Right.
That was not what he wanted. And so I was a little like, I had to treat my own mind before I could treat for him,
Mhm.
because what he asked for was that it be okay.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Yeah, and he actually came to the center because he knew he was dying. He was newly married, and he wanted his wife to have a support group.
Oh, yeah.
people that she could turn to after his passing.
Mhm.
And so he came to me and said, I just need for everybody to be okay. And can we treat that this is okay? And I
Mm.
went, of course it's okay.
Uh,
In my mind, I'm going, holy crap. And I'm,
mhm.
reconfiguring my thoughts so I can be in a new space and hold space for him.
Right.
And he died 2 weeks later.
Yeah. Oh, that is beautiful. That is beautiful.
Yeah, it was a great learning experience for me for this work because we think we know, right? Somebody gets a diagnosis. Well, they want us to pray for health.
Right.
Well,
Yeah,
guess
that's what you
what?
think. Yeah, you need to be with them. And
Mhm.
and I've heard that said by so many spiritual responders. I've talked to a couple chaplains that said, anyway, the idea was that I know this too for a fact. It is not about what you say in those moments. It is not.
Nope, it's
It
not.
is your presence. If people could just realize the value
Yes.
of their presence.
Yeah.
I've had, people always say, "Oh, this is what happened, Bonnie. What can what do I say to make them feel better? What can I do to make them feel better?" It's like there is nothing you can say that makes them feel better.
There's
What
nothing you could say or do.
is support? Just be
Face
there.
to face.
Just be there. I remember once I went to a funeral of a young person. He was in his early 20s. And, so there were lots of young people in attendance. And I saw this one young man just off to the side. Maybe he was like 18 or so. And he was just so distraught, but he was all by himself. And I just went up to him and I just touched his shoulder. And he turned around and I didn't say anything. I just pointed to my shoulder. I pointed to my shoulder. And he just put his head on my shoulder and wept. We never exchanged one word.
Yeah.
And that's what you can do. And
That is what you can do.
oh, what can I say? What can I? It's like that's what you can do. Just be that place where
Be
they
that safe place.
right. And if they want to weep, or if they just want to stand and stare off into space, if they just want to sit in silence, be okay with that. Be
Yeah.
okay with that.
And that comes back to that listening,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yes.
that letting, because there are no right words. There isn't a single word you could say that is a right word. However,
No.
however you say it, it's the words don't do it. It's about being in a place where you can simply be with them.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's it. And that brings us back to our collective grief that we're going through.
Right now.
When yeah, when we read about the mass shootings, and you were talking about the mass graves of children,
Yeah.
what we can do in these times is come together and mourn together,
Yeah.
find groups that you can sit with, or uh, people that allow you to feel safe. Let's put it that way. Being
Mhm.
a safe
Safe
place
place. Yeah.
where you can vent your rage, where you can. I mean, when I heard about the Buffalo shootings
Oh my
and
God.
how they were targeting African American, and for the first time in my years, I felt fear.
Yeah.
Then I was angry, and I wasn't trying to
Yeah.
suppress that. It's like I am just, but express what you need to express, but be in a safe place that you can express that.
Yeah. And allow yourself to do it without actually throwing it onto somebody else, like projecting it onto others, which sometimes happens because when we're hurting, we sometimes behave in a hurtful way. So it's really important. Like you said, if you're feeling anger, it's okay to be angry. This is something to be angry about. Somebody goes in and shoots up a bunch of people because of their skin
Mhm.
color, or somebody
Oh,
drives
there's
down a main street in Toronto because it's women they're trying to kill. or somebody goes into a school and starts shooting up children.
Yes, it's just
All
like,
of these things are done by people who are hurting.
hmm,
And, I think the challenge for the rest of us as we're the observers of something like that is once we feel our own horror and dismay and fear and whatever we're feeling, is to then remember that this too is a call for love. That
mhm,
as hard as it is, the best thing on earth I can do is put my consciousness into a heightened state that allows for forgiveness of the perpetrator, that allows for love for the family they've left behind,
mhm.
um, and of course, love for every person who now is without a beloved family member or whatever. It's such a big call. Not, it's so hard to explain love because
Mhm.
it's a uniting force. It's not an emotion.
Yes.
It's acknowledging that this is a uniting force. And believe it or not, we're out of
Oh,
time.
I just want to just add this one quick thing, just one quick.
Yes, yes.
Please be gentle with yourself. Please be gentle with yourself.
Yes,
Get rest. Make self-care your number one priority right now. Your number one priority is
yes,
taking care of you. That's the best thing you can do for the planet, is take
yes.
care of
Good
you.
view. Yes. Thank
Well, you should
you.
have signed up for 2 hours.
I'll tell you, Bonnie, this has been so rich. It's been so
Oh,
good.
I so
And
appreciate you. I just,
adding to what you just said now, a member of my congregation said, "After me, I love you most."
oh,
Isn't that beautiful?
that is beautiful. That's self-care right there, correct?
Well, this is Rev B, the Joy Show, my good new friend, Bonnie Gonzalez, and we are so delighted you joined us today. I hope you will join on Monday for your grief doula, but also for CSL on the Lake at 7 p.m. Eastern, and the grief
Oh,
doulas at 3 p.m. Eastern on the New Thought Media Network. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for joining. I love you. God bless you. Namaste.
namaste.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.